Could the werewolves of myth be related to the Navajo Skinwalker? We're here to talk about it. This is Aliens and Stuff.
Hi guys, welcome to Aliens and Stuff. I'm Tom, this is Mike, this is Spencer. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification icon because it really does help us out, okay? Now here we're going to talk about, could the werewolves of myth be related to the Navajo Skinwalker? Now I'm not completely au fait with this, so I'm going to pass along to the expert of the subject matter, which is Spencer Woods. So please, Spencer, no pressure, take us away.
Okay, so I wouldn't call myself an expert on this. And I do, well no, I've got to be clear, we've got to handle this with a degree of sensitivity, okay? Because obviously there's a reluctance in the Navajo people with regards to talking about skinwalkers. It is a taboo subject.
We talked about this obviously on the Skinwalker Ranch episode.
We did, yeah, we did to a degree. I don't know if you guys are familiar, I'm just going to give a sort of fairly recent historical thing, but you know the very infamous Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling?
Obviously. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you guys are aware that J.K. Rowling then wrote additional apocrypha for Harry Potter called Pottermore, and one of the things that she addressed in her fictional world was skinwalkers.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and people weren't very happy about it. So she was accused of appropriating the living tradition of marginalised people. Dr. Adrian Keene, who's an activist campaigner, part of Cherokee Nation, had a bit of a spat on Twitter with Rowling. And said, it's not your world, it's our real native world. Skinwalker stories have context, roots and reality. You can't claim and take a living tradition of a marginalised people. That's colonialism / appropriation. So it's a sticky issue, quite a controversial issue, one that we need to deal with sensitively.
Yeah.
That being said, we have seen this question cropping up a lot online. You know, people are making the comparison. You know, are skinwalkers like werewolves? Some people say yes, some people say no. So it's worth addressing. Now, you know quite a lot about werewolves, don't you, Mike?
Well, I've been doing some research recently about where all this has come from, because you think werewolves, you think kind of like Twilight films. You think of, you know, terrible films, right?
Not my cup of tea.
Teenage girls love them, Tom, you know, but we don't, okay? And you think about other things, and there's a lot of misinformation. And
you're a fan, aren't you?
Yeah, Spencer's a massive fan of
I like
Twilight.
Robert Pattinson, what can I say?
There's nothing wrong with that. We know a lot of our fans do.
Photo on your bedroom wall.
Yeah, I do.
Clearly. He's Team Jacob, so we know that.
I've no idea what that is.
We'll go with that.
Right, carry on.
So, talking about werewolves, a lot in popular culture has been changed about the alleged kind of phenomenal myth over the years. So it's evolved and things like this have happened. But going back almost 500 years, there's been a hell of a lot of information about werewolves or wolf-like creatures or people morphing into werewolves, okay? Now, obviously, the overall myth of a werewolf that is the most popular one that's talked about in popular culture is on a full moon, you will turn into a werewolf, from human form into a wolf, and you'll completely lose all track of what you're doing and you'll go around killing people in the night, okay? You must have heard of that. And
oh, yeah, no, I've heard of it.
Spencer, again.
Yeah. Big Twilight fan, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
but that's, you know, some people, you know, in popular culture talk about how they're able to change whenever they want and all this sort of stuff.
Like a shapeshifter.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to address the historical side of it. Okay, so going back 500 years, witchcraft was a huge thing, okay, in the world. There's certain areas of the world that were burning alleged witches at the stake and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It was a similar thing with wolves and alleged werewolves, okay? So I've got a few stories here from Europe. So particularly France and Germany were areas of interest, okay, during history. So in 1521, a Frenchman called Pierre Bourgeau, excuse my pronunciation of that.
That was French.
I apologise to all of our French words.
Good attempt.
And Michel Verdun.
Oh, I like that.
That's an excellent pronunciation. Now, they allegedly swore allegiance to the devil, okay?
Ooh,
and they claimed to have an ointment, okay, that turned them into wolves. Now, after confessing to brutally murdering several children, which horrible, okay, they were both burnt to death at the stake, much like witches were back in that era, in the 1500s.
Interesting.
Now, Giles Garnier, this is a separate story now. Giles Garnier was known as the Werewolf of Dole, or Doual, or whatever the French want to call it, right? I'm going to get shot for these pronunciations later on.
Anyone watching from France is not going to be very...
This is something else that happened in the 1500s. It's a Frenchman whose claim to fame that he also had an ointment, okay, with wolf morphing abilities, is how it was described. Okay, Tom's laughing. I can see his face. He hates
No.
this
I'm just
subject.
thinking Giles Garnier sounds like an aftershave.
It does shout. I'm getting that for Christmas.
It sounds like a race car driver.
Giles Garnier.
Giles Garnier.
Sorry, that was why I was smirking as off what you were saying.
No, according to legend, he again killed children and actually ate them. It was pretty gory. I'm not going to go into that.
Well, he actually,
children.
the evidence that he actually ate them, like cannibalism.
Yeah, that came out afterwards, and he put that down to the fact that he had this ointment that he could turn into a wolf, and the wolf was doing it, not him. Now again, he was burnt to death at the stake for monstrous crimes. Okay,
fair play.
Now, all completely unrelated cases. Okay, except the first two. But there was talk now, looking back on it, were these people just incredibly mentally ill, and you know, maybe had some kind of mental disorder that made them think that they were genuinely wolves. And again, we can't speculate about. There's no proof of this alleged ointment that they were using. So you know, it's up for debate really whether that happened. But that was in Europe in 1500s, 16th century. That's what they claim to have happened. Now, going now over to Germany from France, okay, the Bernburg werewolf. Bernburg werewolf. Have you guys heard of that?
I've heard of it.
I've heard of. Don't know very much about it, so tell me.
I believe that there was films and stuff like that were done on it as well, and I think a few kind of sci-fi like docus have kind of referenced the Bernburg werewolf over the periods of time. But this guy's called Peter Stubb. Okay, again, really bad. Apologies to Germany for my pronunciation in general. It's appalling. But he was a wealthy 15th century, again, farmer from Bedburg, Germany. Okay, now he's probably one of the most kind of notorious ones because he's been used further back in history. Now, he was eventually blamed for the gruesome killings after being... He killed a load of people, but he was cornered by a load of hunters who claimed that they saw him shapeshift from wolf to human form. Okay. Which is when they caught him and knew it was him that had done it. Now, he experienced a grisly execution, again, after confessing under torture that he'd actually savagely killed quite a lot of animals, which is bizarre.
Better than children?
Men, women and children. Okay. So he did go down that route eventually.
So he went through the whole kit and
caboodle. And then he also, again, like the French guys, ate them, which is really gruesome. Okay?
Yeah.
But there's similarities, different countries, people weren't travelling back then, really. So that there's a lot of things. And again, I think this is nonsense. He didn't talk of an ointment at all in any way, shape or form, but he talked about, you're going to laugh at this, Tom, particularly, I'm going to quote on it. He said an enchanted belt. He was wearing an enchanted belt that allowed him to turn into a wolf and back into a human.
Well, then he had the option then. He had the option then, didn't he? So then if it's all true and he killed loads of, kids, children and ate them all as a wolf, why put the belt on?
It's a good
question.
It's a good question, but Batman had a belt.
I put the belt on once.
He didn't turn into a bat, though,
terrible
did he?
things happened. I'll put the belt back on. Of course you wouldn't put the belt back on.
I mean, it's nonsense.
You burned the belt.
These bits in history, 15th century, they were nonsense. In the 15th century, as we know, and I'm sure we will talk about, witches and stuff in future episodes at some point. I don't know. But there was a lot of myth back then about creatures and cryptids and witches and people shape-shifting and stuff like that. But there's a lot of similarities between the two countries at a time where people weren't communicating between areas. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring that bit up.
Yeah.
I've got something more in current times as well, because we talk about I talked at the beginning about the moon and about how allegedly in popular culture and in myth they talk about how werewolves shapeshift from humans into wolves on a full moon.
Yeah.
Okay?
But there is evidence that people's kind of mood can be changed by
yes.
incarnate because of gravitational effects,
exactly.
etc. But not
Well, that's what
To
I want
that
to talk
extent.
about here, because at Australia's Calvary Mater Newcastle Hospital, I don't know why they named their hospital in such a long way. If anyone wants to tell us, it's a crazy name for a hospital, but fair play.
Could you imagine that?
They actually did a study between 2008 and 2009. Okay. Now, during that period, they had 91 violent acute behaviour incidents happen from patients towards staff during that period of time in the hospital. 91 over the course of a year. Okay. Now, interestingly, what they found is that 23% of those incidents that occurred happened on a full moon.
So that's not the majority.
No, but 20 odd of them are one time in a month. One
Yeah, but
night in a month.
how long does a full moon last for?
Is it 1 or 2 days, is it?
Not long.
And this was how long this period was for?
Every year. So it was a good period of time to get enough data.
Yeah, but you get more than one full moon a year, don't you?
Yeah, of course you
So
do.
you
You get one a month.
Yeah, you get one a month, don't you? So it's like it's not quite a monthly cycle, but it's close, isn't it?
So it's, yeah, so...
What I'm saying
Okay,
is
so
you're...
yeah, I see what you're saying. It's
I
not
get
a
what you're saying, but
huge-
if it was like 80% of them or 70% of them happened during that period, I'd be like, there's more evidence, rather it's actually not the majority.
Yeah, so this is what they then said that these people, so this 23%, during that period, they said that they displayed wolf-like behaviours, such as biting, spitting and scratching, okay? Although many of them were actually under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time.
Right.
I've seen you pretty scratchy when you're drinking, Tom, so we can take that away. Maybe we got...
I love that you said that as he was scratching his head as well.
He's scratching his head going, yeah, this is complete nonsense. But it's unclear why they became violent, but obviously the main thing is that a lot of these things happened on a full moon. I'm not saying for a second that werewolves exist, but they have also listed a number of other medical conditions which can be obviously treated but also diagnosed that could explain this behaviour.
Rabies?
Okay? Rabies. Well, it's a possible one. Rabies is on my list, fun enough. So rabies, one, that's top of the list.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin
An
your
obvious
list.
one again, hallucination, possibly caused by hallucinogenic herbs and drugs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's obvious.
Because when was this?
2008 and 9, so it's not that long ago.
Okay. Okay.
Another one is something called lycanthropy.
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 Clinical
My pronunciation
lycanthropy.
today is appallingly bad.
What is that?
It's a rare psychological condition that causes people to believe they're changing into a wolf or another animal.
Okay.
All right. Another one is food poisoning.
Betty and Barney Hill, buddy.
Food poisoning crops up
Hallucinogenic.
again.
Food poisoning.
Any cake?
That came up in, yeah. There
So
we go.
are you a convert now to the food poisoning hallucination theory?
No. I still think that, I'm not going to talk about
Not for
Betty and Barney
alien
Hill.
reduction, but for wolves.
Wolves is fine.
I
Absolutely.
think Betty and Barney Hill was again that
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra, but we'll do an MK Ultra episode in the future. Yeah, and then the other one was hyperculosis, a rare genetic disorder causing excessive hair growth. That's people that are essentially just hairy. They're not wolves. But
Yeah.
that explains everything about
I'm not that.
what the research that I've done on werewolves. I don't think for a second personally that werewolves are real.
Yeah.
But I know, Spencer, do you want to tie this into
Yeah. So
skinwalkers?
So I mean, I from what you're saying is with werewolves, it's kind of like there's no real evidence of werewolves. There's not loads of common sightings. I mean, you get sightings of things like the dog man and stuff.
Yeah, man.
Well, yeah, he's not a canine, is he? But do you know what I mean? There's a lot of like sightings like that, but no real sort of grounding or basis
No,
in reality
there isn't.
for that. And what you're saying is historically, it's kind of people were afraid to face the horror of acts committed by people, and then the wolf thing was a sort of almost like a coping mechanism of accepting that people
Like an excuse.
like a reason why somebody would commit. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Well, they either believe that they're werewolves and they're mentally ill, or they don't, and they're using it as an excuse. That's my opinion.
Okay. Cool. So, I mean, as we said earlier, there's been a lot of talk online. You know, skinwalkers, because it's a topic that's quite hard to find information out. It's not openly spoken about within Navajo communities very often. There's a lot of misinformation flying around. We've been really, really blessed actually to have had a couple of people, Navajo people, one from a reservation, one who's left a reservation recently, come forward and have a discussion with us about some of the features of a skinwalker.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Both wanted to remain anonymous, which is absolutely fine. But we've really tried to do our due diligence in terms of actually talking to people about it instead of just spouting off. So, I mean, just to sort of clear a couple of things up, really, the differences between werewolves and skinwalkers. So, with lycanthropy, clinical lycanthropy, possibly, as you were saying, it tends to be either a wolf has bit you, and you're going to transform, and you have no control over it. There's in ancient mythology, like in Greek and Roman mythology, a lot of the time it was a punishment from the gods for committing a insidious act, turning into a wolf. I had actually come across the belt thing before. I'd come across potions, ointments, divine punishment, divine blessing, the result of sleeping outside. One story about werewolves is that there was a special beer which turned people into werewolves in mythology.
Sounds good, actually.
So
now that the pubs are open again, is that classed as a substantial meal?
If you have a child afterwards?
A pint of wolf beer.
A pint of beer, as long as you eat a child afterwards.
Well, so with werewolves across history, there's been a plethora of different reasons why they've transformed.
Okay.
But it tends to be a lot of the time that they transform and then they have no control over what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now the initial difference between that and skinwalkers. So with skinwalkers, it's not a bite or a disease that causes it. A skinwalker has to engage in various taboo rituals, which
so it's a choice for them.
It's a choice. It's an active choice for them to do it. So they don't get accidentally turned into skinwalkers. There's ceremonies. There's apparently these rituals include things like the murder of family members, and other obscene acts, which enable them to have this power. And also different powers. So, I mean, talking about werewolves in general, they tend to be all about maulings, don't they? You know, and although skinwalkers are described as fast and powerful, they're not really renowned for maulings, although they can attack. So they're just as likely to use their powers of transformation to spy on people. In
the Skinwalker Ranch episode, we talked about them as tricksters, didn't we? And how they were looking in the main homestead in the windows, coming and moving the shopping around and stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Not very like mauling dog behaviour, is it?
No, exactly. There's more sort of consciousness to it. They're renowned for using dark magic against their victims. So, one interview that I saw described it as hexes. They put hexes on people, they curse people. One of the people who contacted us anonymously described it as bad medicine. They can just make bad things happen. And that means, for all intents and purposes, that they can cause accidents to happen. So they're less likely to maul you and more likely to cause a car accident to happen, cause you to choke on food, cause you to become ill. So there's a big difference there because it's a more insidious nature than it is just an animalistic mauling. Okay. Yeah, it's a choice. Also, skinwalkers don't tend to be lone wolves. You hear a lot of these stories, and it's either one person solo or two people that claim to transform and commit these heinous acts. Whereas skinwalkers, they're almost more like a sort of secret society from the conversations that I've been having. It's there'll be a group of them, and they'll engage in rituals as a group to basically, carry out these transformations and commit these acts.
And because they've kind of got too involved in the dark magic of whatever, they've kind of gone too far with it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the reasoning behind it. I'm more about people's motivations and why they choose to do these things. They've kind of just got too involved.
Yeah, so one thing I was reading about, which is that the medicine men, they have to use sort of good and bad medicine, to perform the feats that they do. And skinwalkers, have sort of fallen on the side of bad medicine, fallen on that side.
You're saying this is like Star Wars, Spencer? Are they looking at the Force, right? And then they choose whether to go down the dark side or the light side?
In a way, I suppose you could see it as that, yeah.
You're looking so confused, Tom.
Not Vader.
He doesn't even like Star Wars, does he?
More of a Trek fan, aren't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think the biggest one in this is that, you know, werewolves transform into wolves.
Yeah, they're wolves. Yeah.
Skinwalkers don't just transform. They can transform into loads of different animals. So in the Navajo language, and I'm not going to make an attempt to pronounce it because we've already messed up French and German in this episode.
Yeah, apologies, guys.
I think we can limit that, but it translates to by means of it, it goes on all fours.
Right.
And I saw an interview where it was described that because skinwalkers is to walk in the skin, they can transform into anything from a fox to a horse, either in part or whole. So they could be fully transformed, they could be a hybrid. There's a lot of flexibility in it.
The limited knowledge, you know more about skinwalkers than I do, but I've been told that the coyote particularly has bad connotations.
Yeah, so it's just bringing it back to the question that we asked at the beginning. I was having a conversation only a couple of days ago with somebody, and before I even mentioned what the episode was going to be about, they said, and this is verbatim what they said, I've heard a lot of people saying that they favour the wolf form. This is wrong and embarrassing to hear. And it's because they don't. They actually favour the form of a coyote, which is sort of seen as a trickster animal related to witchcraft. And the words that the Navajo person said to me was, it's like a black cat, but worse.
Like a black cat.
Like a black cat, but worse.
Fair enough.
You know,
nothing worse than the black cat until now.
Cat.
Yeah, we got it from the straight from the source there. It's to say that they favour a wolf form and transform into wolves. It's wrong and embarrassing. So I think we've kind of wrapped the question up there as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. Tom, have you got any further thoughts?
All I would
what
like
do you
to
think?
say.
Are they linked?
No. I bet. Okay, so I can get behind a Skinwalker a little bit more after covering Skinwalker Ranch. If we hadn't have done that episode on Skinwalker Ranch, I would have turned around and said all of this on both sides is complete nonsense, right? But I think there is like something going on there. Yeah. I don't think even they really know what's going on.
Well, it's like I said, it's a living tradition for them.
Yeah,
you know,
it's something that's been passed on generation to generation, and whether actually anything ever comes of it is whatever. But that's one thing. That's beliefs. This is people who commit crimes
in the 1500s.
In the 1500s, where they've seen something, and I reckon like the guy goes around and he kills people and kills kids, eats them, savages them like a wolf, and next thing you know is this like again like whispers, oh, he was a wolf. Oh yeah, no, I was a wolf. Yeah, I had no control over what was going on. Let me off this crime. I think it's absolute rubbish.
So let me just ask you a question. Do you believe in werewolves?
No.
Yes or no? Do you believe in skinwalkers?
I believe there's a phenomenon there.
Okay, Spencer, same question.
Yeah, I believe in skinwalkers. I think considering that all of the sources we're bringing up for werewolves seem to be ancient Greece in the 1500s. I mean, there probably are cases out there that you could find, but it's not in.
There's no proof.
It's not in the.
No proof.
It's not in the Western consciousness that werewolves are real. Skinwalkers is something that people have sightings of and believe to this day, and there's a lot of credibility there. So
yeah, I agree.
That's a bad case of rabies.
Skinwalkers are real. They're not werewolves.
Yeah.
So werewolves, let's just leave that in kind of pop culture.
They're not the same thing.
Okay, let's just enjoy the Twilight films for what they are. We'll be watching
Robert
them
Pattinson.
We'll be watching them this Christmas, Tom. So, guys, I'm going to ask the question: could the werewolves of myth be related to the Navajo Skinwalker? Spencer?
No.
No.
No, I agree.
It's 3 no's. It's unanimous.
We are unanimous.
It's not the same thing.
So there we go, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to
please like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon. It really does help.
see you next week. Cheers.